Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And it looks like they're ramping up for COVID again, and we got to keep a watchful eye on everything going on. Well, just the other day, the New Civil Liberties Alliance filed a brief opposing the government's motion to dismiss a lawsuit against the Biden administration's unconstitutional COVID-19 vaccine mandate for government contractors. President Biden should not be allowed to reimpose this mandate on a whim. He's already talking about forcing people to get vaccines again. So this lawsuit must continue. Let's get the latest from a gentleman we've had on the program before. He's litigation counsel for NCLA. Sheng Li is with us here. And how are you? Good day. Welcome.
Good day. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So tell us about the latest with these mandates. And, with COVID, looks like they're getting ready to ramp it up again. What's the status of this particular lawsuit?
So as your listeners may recall, there were a number of vaccine mandates that the government announced back in 2021. One of them is this mandate for employees at federal who work for federal contractors, and the president imposed it on the theory this would help improve the efficiency of procurement. The problem is that statutory authority only gives the president the power to structure government agencies, how they do procurement. It doesn't let him reach into contractors' internal processes to do whatever he thinks will make them more efficient. And this mandate has actually suffered a number of losses before courts of appeal who halted it, who paused it. They didn't make any final rulings, but they paused and said, let's pause this until we make a final ruling. But before they were able to make a final ruling, the president, what he did in May was he withdrew the mandate on the premise that the pandemic's over, and we agree that's true. It's been over for actually quite a bit longer than May, but he withdrew it based on that. And he says now that he's withdrew it, that the whole thing is moot.
But he still claims the authority to reimpose it at his whim, correct?
That's right. And, it would be one thing if he withdrew it and said, hey, the reason I'm withdrawing is that 3 courts of appeal have ruled that this thing looks very suspicious and likely to be unlawful, and that's why I'm getting rid of it. But instead, he withdrew it, and at the same time, he's still filing briefs in court defending the legality of the mandate, and in public statements, he's defending the wisdom of it, which strongly suggests that he just wants to hold this in his back pocket as a policy instrument to reimpose it if he feels the need arises. And he said in his executive order withdrawing it that the reason he's doing it is because hospitalization rates are now low. This was back in May. Suggests if hospitalization rates rise again as they are now, what's to prevent him from writing a new executive order that puts it back? And in fact, it takes about an hour to do that.
I'm suspecting that they're itching to reimpose it. I mean, they're talking about COVID again and masking and getting mandates and taking the vaccine. So it looks like that they're getting started with this whole ramp up of the fear and the mandates and everything once more. And my opinion has always been that these vaccines should be voluntary. If you want to take it, fine, but no one should be forced to take a vaccine anywhere. A child in school, a person working in his own business, a government contractor, a government employee, anybody. Would you agree with that?
That's right, and that's a reason for these lawsuits. And I'm fully vaccinated. Everyone I work with are, and so it's a personal choice. And if you feel comfortable with it, you should do it. If you don't, you shouldn't have to lose your job for it. Certainly the government shouldn't go and force your employer to fire you. We certainly hope that the government isn't trying to position itself to reimpose any of these again. But we want what we want is a final court ruling saying they can't, and so that just takes the whole option off the table. And so they can't play games by withdrawing it, dodging lawsuits, and then having the power to put it back sometime in the future.
So this is now, where does this stand in the courts, and what's the timeline on a decision?
Well, our case is in the Western District of Michigan, and we're still waiting for the government's final response, and then it might be weeks or months before the district court there rules.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about all these other mandates that were instituted during the COVID hysteria? Where do they stand right now as we get ready for them ramping it up again?
Well, many of them were struck down. Like the really big one was the OSHA mandate that was struck down. An interesting one that's very similar to our case is the one that was for soldiers. The Defense Department and all the service departments issued mandates for soldiers. Congress actually wrote a law that says you got to take that out. And then they did, but what happened was then the departments, including the Navy, for instance, said, oh, yeah, we took it out, but we insist on having the authority to put it back in through regulation in the future if we want. So they're very explicit in wanting the power to reimpose that mandate, even though Congress told them explicitly to take it out.
So do they have any mandates that are legal? I mean, are any of them went through the courts unscathed? And do they have the ability in any circumstance to force people to take a vaccine that they don't want to take?
The only one that survived scrutiny that I'm aware of is for hospital workers. And I think you would understand why that would make sense. It's because you're working in a very high-risk environment, and again, that was you have to look at the actual facts. And back then it was 2020, late 2021, early 2022, when the virus was a lot more virulent, a lot more people were getting infected and hospitalized.
Do you sense that this is all starting to ramp up again?
I certainly hope not. I know there's a kind of a surge going on, in terms of case rates and hospitalization rates. I think as long as these lawsuits are alive, they stop the administration from really, trying to reimpose any of them.
Right.
Now, if the lawsuits were dismissed for mootness, then I think that opens the doors a little more.
Does the same thing apply to mask mandates?
Our lawsuits do not. There are other cases, and the issue with the mask mandates our legal issues are a little different. Most of those have been imposed through state organizations rather than kind of federal.
Sheng Li, thank you so much for joining us. Keep up the great work at the new Civil Liberties Alliance, and we look forward to having you back on. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the update today.